When discussing Xi Jinping's governance abilities, most people likely feel it's a complete disaster, especially regarding the economy, which he has made a chaotic mess. If we review Xi's policies, starting from housing is for living, not for speculation, to common prosperity, and now the new productive forces, even including the recent stock market stimulus measures over the past couple of weeks, it seems like none of them have avoided failure. As a result, Xi Jinping has earned the nickname Chief Accelerator. In this context, many classic jokes have come about. One such joke about Biden's 4 years in office goes, "What did Biden achieve in his term?" While Biden didn't do much, both of America's main rivals self-destructed. Russia under Putin with military suicide and China under Xi Jinping with economic suicide. When we look at Xi Jinping's numerous flawed economic decisions, a question naturally arises. Why do his policies consistently lead to such major problems? Is it really because Xi Jinping is incompetent? If that's the case, how did he become General Secretary? And if he's inept, are all his advisors just as clueless? Could it be that there isn't a single true economist among the top ranks of the Chinese Communist Party? Hi, welcome to Dig Into China. I'm Dong Shang. In this episode, I'll dive into this issue and explore why Xi Jinping keeps choosing the wrong path for economic development. Not long ago, I gave a detailed explanation of the main development path for China's economy. Broadly speaking, there are three key approaches. One, returning to the heavy infrastructure model from the Jiang Zemin, Hu Jintao, and Wen Jiabao era. Two, the U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen's model, which focused on boosting consumption. And three, the current path we are following, Xi Jinping's new productive forces model. Why did Xi Jinping decisively choose to follow his new productive forces model instead of reverting to the Hu-Wen model or adopting the Western consumption stimulus approach? Many people attribute this to a flaw in Xi's understanding. While it's true that his perspective has issues, the situation is more complex. This cognitive problem is intertwined with political factors, which I will explain one by one. First, Xi Jinping's divergence from the Hu-Wen path is typically viewed as chaotic interference. However, this shift is closely linked to his self-perception in politics. Xi has consistently labeled himself a reformer, a title often promoted by state media. When people hear the term reformer, their immediate reaction is often one of skepticism. How can someone who continually drags the country back to the Mao Zedong era claim to be a reformer? It might be more fitting to call him a reverse driver. Certainly, while it's easy to mock him, if we examine Xi Jinping's actions since he took office, he can be viewed as a reformer to some degree, particularly within the Chinese Communist Party's higher ranks. Although you may not endorse his reform accomplishments, it's evident that the reform aspect of Xi's tenure is more noticeable when compared to the Hu-Wen era. So, what exactly has Xi Jinping reformed? To answer that question, we need to look back at the circumstances when he took office. At the beginning of Xi's tenure, the Chinese Communist Party was confronting two major crises, a political crisis and an economic crisis. The political crisis arose from the rapid growth during the Hu-Wen era, which resulted in widespread corruption within the bureaucratic system. This corruption had become nearly transparent, with a common belief that officials were simply there to embezzle funds without the fear of punishment. This state of affairs was a general consensus in the society, and it was clear that maintaining it was not a viable option. The economic crisis, meanwhile, stemmed from the rapid growth during the Hu-Wen era, which was heavily reliant on a development model centered around land financing. This dependence caused housing prices to surge and led local governments to lose financial discipline, resulting in widespread overspending. Clearly, persisting with this approach was not a viable option. As a result, when Xi Jinping assumed office, his main focus was on addressing these two crises. To tackle corruption, he launched an extensive anti-corruption campaign. In order to address economic challenges, he introduced various policies aimed at reducing the Chinese government's dependence on land finance, seeking new core growth drivers for the economy beyond the real estate sector. These two reform goals have been fundamental to Xi Jinping's governance throughout his tenure, and in my opinion, have also served as the basis for his legitimacy. This legitimacy mainly pertains to his standing within the internal factions of the Chinese Communist Party. Xi's anti-corruption efforts, which contradict the policies of the Hu-Wen era, are not solely about consolidating power or establishing a personal dictatorship. Rather, they are intended to assist the party in overcoming its crisis and safeguarding the Communist Party's legacy. Among Xi Jinping's two core reform initiatives, the anti-corruption campaign stands out for being more prominent, with a considerable impact and a clear, coherent objective. Consequently, people are more attuned to it. It's evident that a consistent anti-corruption movement has been in place since Xi assumed office. The scenario is different in terms of economic policy. Firstly, Xi Jinping's rejection of the Hu-Wen era's policies occurred more subtly. While he may oppose these policies, he cannot openly criticize them due to party conventions. After all, even after the Gang of Four was dismantled, Mao Zedong continues to be hailed as the great leader. Denying the legitimacy of past leaders can easily undermine the Communist Party's overall authority. Even when completely overhauling previous policies, it's customary to adopt a new label, such as reform and opening up, which is a long-standing practice within the party. This makes Xi's opposition to the economic reform strategies of the Hu-Wen era less conspicuous. Moreover, economic reform has not been nearly as smooth as the anti-corruption campaign. The policies have gone through various revisions and changes. For instance, the original housing is for living in, not for speculation policy encountered setbacks, prompting a pivot to common prosperity, and now there is a renewed emphasis on new quality productivity. This cyclical process has experienced numerous failures and reversals, making the economic reforms less noticeable. Nevertheless, it can be stated that since Xi Jinping assumed office, his primary focus has been on political anti-corruption and the adjustment of economic policies from the Hu-Wen era. These two initiatives represent the core of Xi's political agenda. During the COVID-19 pandemic, it was often said that if Xi Jinping abandoned the zero-COVID policy, it would significantly damage his personal authority. While this impact would certainly be real, it pales in comparison to what would happen if he were to abandon his anti-corruption efforts or reverse his departure from the Hu-Wen economic model. These two pillars are critical to Xi's political foundation. Letting go of them would truly destabilize his governance. This is why Xi feels compelled to persist with his approach and why a return to Hu-Wen economic policies is unlikely. It would amount to a rejection of his entire governing legacy. Xi Jinping doesn't have to return to the Hu-Wen model. He has other options. One possibility is to embrace a Western market economy model centered on stimulating consumption rather than pursuing common prosperity or the so-called new quality productivity. These approaches involve a cycle of trial and error that risks further destabilizing the Chinese economy. The reason Xi Jinping chooses not to pursue this path is also rooted in politics. First, it's essential to grasp a key point. Economic success does not necessarily mean success for Xi Jinping or the Communist Party. These concepts are not interchangeable. For the Chinese people, a good economic policy is simple. It should drive economic growth and raise incomes for everyone. However, for the Communist Party and Xi Jinping, a successful policy is one that highlights the strengths of their authoritarian regime, under which the economy can flourish. Such policies are viewed as favorable from their standpoint. What kind of policies meet Xi Jinping's criteria? Concepts like common prosperity and the modern idea of new quality productivity align with his vision. For example, when we look at the new quality productivity, both approaches focus on developing high technology. But Xi's model differs from the Western approach. Consider OpenAI and China's BYD. The primary difference lies in their foundation. OpenAI is a result of market-driven choices, while BYD's success is significantly bolstered by state support. The technological innovation and economic growth that arise from government backing are central to Xi's policy framework. And this aspect is something the Western world cannot achieve. Although Western democratic societies do offer support for specific industries, the level of that support is significantly lower than what the Chinese Communist Party provides. This difference arises partly because Western countries prioritize market economies and tend to minimize intervention. Furthermore, as democratic governments, they are constrained in their ability to allocate substantial resources for such initiatives. In Xi Jinping's ideal scenario, his concept of new quality productivity and ambitious electric vehicle initiatives would leverage the mobilization capabilities afforded by the Communist Party's authoritarian governance. This approach aims for rapid experimentation and technological breakthroughs that are often elusive in the West. By harnessing state power to allocate social resources and emphasizing industrial policies and innovation, the objective would be to establish China as a front runner in the 21st century industrial revolution. Additionally, China's leadership in this new industrial era could fundamentally challenge and reshape the United States' dominant position in both international system and in political governance. This type of success is precisely what Xi Jinping and the Communist Party envision. This mindset is evident not only in the issue of new quality productivity, but across all policies implemented since Xi Jinping took office. The evaluation of whether a policy is deemed good or not hinges not on its actual success, but rather on its ability to demonstrate the superiority of the Communist Party's system. This mindset is further illustrated by China's approach to COVID-19 prevention. From the very beginning, China's policies have been starkly different from those of the West, and they reflect the capabilities that the West simply cannot achieve. The reason for this limitation in the West is similar to their inability to provide substantial support for electric vehicles. Western nations do not have the capacity to mobilize as many social resources and cannot impose restrictions on people's movements at will. Regardless of the policy's effectiveness, the key point is that only a dictatorial government like mine can implement such measures. This makes it a favorable policy, one that I desire. If it succeeds, wouldn't it serve as evidence of the superiority of my regime? I believe that Xi Jinping is aware of the correct path at times, but this path, although it may be beneficial for the country and the people, does not align with the interests of the Communist Party or his personal agenda. Economic development itself is not his primary goal. During the COVID-19 outbreak, minimizing deaths was not his main priority either. Rather, the top objective of all his policies has been to showcase the superiority of the Communist Party's governance and his own leadership. Deng Xiaoping once mentioned feeding the stones to cross the river. And back then, some people mocked him, saying, "There is a bridge right next to you, yet you are insisting on feeding your way across the stones. Aren't you being ridiculous?" But could Deng Xiaoping not see the bridge? Of course he could. The reason he avoided the bridge is that it was built on a democratic system, while he was seeking a path for development within an authoritarian regime. This applies to Xi Jinping as well. The path of consumerism represents a bridge that's already built. If he chooses it, the Chinese economy could function normally. Do you think he doesn't see it? I don't think that's the case at all. He simply prefers not to take that route. Xi Jinping's frequent flawed economic decisions stem from his desire to establish a path that showcases the superiority of authoritarianism. Additionally, even if he wishes to make the right economic choices, he finds himself unable to do so. Stimulating consumer spending needs to be supported by a democratic system. If the goal is to adopt Western methods for encouraging consumption and lead technological innovation through consumer-driven growth, what is required? While some might assume that simply distributing cash is the answer, that's just a minor aspect. The more critical factors include establishing a comprehensive and fair social welfare system to instill confidence in spending, reducing government expenditures to ensure individuals have disposable income, and ensuring social equity and upholding the rule of law, which together enable innovative companies to flourish as consumer demand rises. However, these are exactly the areas where the Chinese Communist Party falters. If tasked with building schools and hospitals, the CCP can demonstrate efficiency, announcing a plan to construct a school or hospital, and the projects will swiftly commence across the country, leading to a rapid increase in the number of these institutions. However, challenges often arise in resource allocation and the effective use of funds. In some areas, there may be 4 or 5 hospitals but few patients, while in others there are many patients but a significant shortage of hospitals. Moreover, the welfare system created by CCP is fundamentally inequitable. For example, China's current pension system shows considerable income disparities, and increasing spending on benefits could end up subsidizing a privileged class. Ensuring fairness in capital markets and upholding the rule of law is even more absurd. If the law truly takes precedence over everything, what becomes of the CCP? Moreover, lowering government expenditures presents an even more formidable challenge for the CCP. It requires true integrity, necessitating a leaner government, along with transparency in governmental operations and spending. Without discussing whether China can genuinely eliminate corruption and reduce personnel, if such reductions happen and the number of civil servants decreases, who will ensure stability of the CCP? Maintaining stability comes with considerable costs, naturally inflating government spending in China. Thus, expecting the CCP to forsake stability maintenance is completely out of the question. In summary, economic policies designed to stimulate consumption will ultimately depend on which government can create a fairer system that effectively upholds the rule of law, as well as which can operate with lower costs and a more efficient administrative structure. These are precisely the areas where the CCP falls short. The CCP excels in exploiting the populace and extracting wealth from society, revealing the inherent weakness of its dictatorial regime. Thus, if the CCP were to pursue consumption-stimulating strategies, it would only serve to expose the flaws of its own system. This explains why I think that despite that many institutions, economists, and external voices urging China to stimulate consumption, the CCP is reluctant to take action. Although boosting consumption could be the solution to China's economic issues, the party finds it difficult to pursue such a course. Thank you so much for watching. If you find this video helpful, please like it, drop a comment below, and hit the subscribe button right here. It really helps YouTube suggest my video to others. I'll be back with more content soon. Until then, stay well.